time to waste. The final NBA rank is out. Who should be the NBA's top player? Giannis, KD, or LeBron? And speaking of the king, Lakers GM Rob Pelinka expects a slimmed-down LeBron this season. What does that mean for LA this year? Plus, only 6 teams remain in the WNBA playoffs after a thriller in Phoenix. What could happen in round 2 this weekend? And rapper and Knicks superfan Fat Joe joins us. We're all the way up as the jump starts now. I'm not as smooth as Joe, but, you know, we keep it rocking. The undefeated's Clinton Yates and ESPN NBA reporter Tim Bontemps with us today. Tim, you're in New York, where the Knicks front office just spoke to the media. We heard this week that some Nets players are not vaccinated yet, which, of course, is particularly significant in New York, where there is a vaccine mandate for indoor events. What did you hear from the Knicks on that front?
Well, to your point, Cassidy, when I asked Nets general manager Sean Marks earlier this week if all of his players could practice as of now because of that COVID-19 vaccine mandate in New York City, he said obviously a couple players could not practice right now, and he was hoping that would change by the start of the regular season. GM of the Knicks, Scott Perry, on the other hand, was able to say very confidently today his entire organization, players, medical staff, coaches, front office, the entire organization is fully vaccinated, and the Knicks were very excited to talk about that today and to proudly say we are not going to have any issues at all with this vaccine mandate. We're going to be able to go into the regular season, not having any issues with that, being able to practice up here in Greenburgh and suburban Westchester County next week and get underway after what was a very exciting season for them last year, when they hope to build on this year and try to make another playoff run.
Yeah, so the only questions that remain around the Knicks is what's going to happen with them on the court this year. And they're trying to make the playoffs in back-to-back years after missing the last 7. Tim, I'm going to go back to you first. Where do they feel they are in building a consistent winning franchise?
Well, Cassie, you and I have been around the Knicks for a long time, right? And the idea of them being a stable, boring, competent, good team is just not something we'd be able to say very often about the New York Knicks, right? But that's really what they were projecting today. They feel good about the place they're in. They went out this summer and got Kemba Walker and Evan Fournier from the Boston Celtics in free agency, 2 guys that will help them address their biggest weakness in that first-round loss to the Atlanta Hawks and their inability to score in the half court and create shots off the dribble. And on top of that, they stressed the fact that they have 15 draft picks in the next 4 years, including 6 first-round picks, and they have a bunch of good players signed to longer-term deals that they could potentially package in a deal for a star player. As Coach Tom Thibodeau said, we're focused on being good today, and we're also looking to try to be good at any point we can be in the future and improve on our roster. So, you know, for a Knicks team that has so often been chaotic and going from one plan to another and never having a set, solid trajectory that they're sticking to and staying on, you know, the Knicks today projected just being a simply competent, normal franchise, which after being here for a decade, it's hard for me to say that. It's kind of an incredible thing that we're talking about the Knicks like a normal NBA team.
Competent and normal. Clinton, are you feeling that the Knicks could be a long-term player in the East?
I am. I got to say I'm with Tim on this, which is that, hey, the Knicks have a relatively sort of young, I don't want to say core, but they've got enough guys that they can move forward and they're not aging out like, say, I don't know, the Heat are doing in the same conference. I'm stunned that the Knicks have this together. This is fantastic. I think if you're in New York, you've actually got a team. There's plenty of other teams in the East Coast that have been trying to do this, sort of bottom out and stay relevant while still building. Washington Wizards, I'm looking at you, who haven't been able to do it. This team has. More specifically to the point of the COVID factor. The whole team being fully vaccinated instead with the rest of this.
Yep.
I'm sorry, I'm impressed. This is what we're supposed to be doing as far as I'm concerned from a public health and a safety standpoint. For a team that prominently come out and say, we've got this under control, I think it looks good for the NBA, I think it looks good for the organization, and I think it looks good for all the players that are there. They've done a fantastic job this offseason, as I see it.
And they can hit the ground running because, as we've talked about, training camps open next week. And from one coast to the other, guys, as LeBron gets ready for the pre-training camp, mini camp, in Las Vegas this weekend that he has coordinated. LeBron's numbers over his 3 seasons in LA, guys, slightly declined year over year since joining the club in 2018, though 25, 8, and 8 are still incredible numbers. However, Lakers GM Rob Pelinka says that this year we'll see a lighter LeBron.
LeBron's been in working hard, working really early in the morning. And I think the thing that stands out is just his fitness level. And he slimmed up going into this stage of his career. He's made a decision to come back a little bit leaner. And I think that's going to translate in his explosiveness and quickness. But he's been very, very locked in with his training. And you just get a sense he has a confidence in his teammates.
I mean, that $1 million a year on his body, I guess, is paying off. I mean, that VersaClimber, by the way, that is no joke. If you want a good workout, get on that VersaClimber. But Clinton, I'll start with you. What would a slimmer LeBron mean for the Lakers?
Quickly, I just want to point out that Pelinka said he's been working out really early in the morning, but the video says evening workout, so I'm not really sure what the schedule is there. But I think that what it means for LeBron and the Lakers, I mean, the explosive is one thing, sure, but just from a simple matter of durability, I think that's what you're looking for in LeBron. Listen, I think LeBron James is the best basketball player in the history of planet Earth, but he's still getting up there in age, and he has played a lot of basketball games. Simply being able to get through the season, I think, is the priority for a team that's hoping to make a long playoff run. So, sure, the ins and outs of his game are one thing, but whether or not he can play 82 or whatever it might be under the load management situation they have, I think that's as important as anything from a game standpoint. I'm not expecting LeBron James's level of play to go down. The question is how much can he do it in one season, and that's what I think this is, a conditioning matter overall.
As usual, my guy Clinton is right on top of it. You look at the last 3 seasons, right? 2 of the last 3 years, LeBron's had a significant injury. That first year in LA, he had the groin injury on Christmas Day, set back the rest of his season. Last year, he had the high ankle sprain, set back the rest of that season, even into the playoffs, right? This, to me, is all about LeBron James going into year 19, trying to make it through a full 82-game season, to Clinton's point, and being there when the playoffs start in April to make another playoff run into June and to try to win that 5th title. We know LeBron wants to try to win another MVP. He's gone after that each of the past few years. I'm sure he'll try to do that again. But we know he wants to try to catch Cassidy's guy, Michael Jordan, and get those 6 NBA titles. He's got 4. He's trying to get a 5th one. And everything he could do to stay on the court, and like Clinton said, get through that 82-game season and get to the 16-game season that really matters, that's everything he's focused on every day.
And look, I think the Lakers are getting poked at and made fun of for their age, but I think part of the reason why they brought on experienced guys is to make sure that if LeBron needed to do some load management, they had some guys in there who knew what they were doing, who had the experience to win some games and get them through some stretches. So one other note from Pelinka yesterday, the Lakers do plan to be fully vaccinated by opening night, but aren't yet. LA County does not have the same restrictions as San Francisco and New York as of right now, so LA players only have to follow NBA's health and safety protocols to be eligible to play, but we'll see how that develops, especially when traveling to cities like San Francisco and New York. Now, some other notable news coming out yesterday. It appears the days of players contorting their bodies to draw fouls may finally be taking a hit, if you will. Tim, you were on a call with NBA Senior Vice President Monty McCutcheon. What did you learn about how the league is cracking down on these moves?
I think you could sum Monty's talk up in one sentence that he said at the beginning. He wants basketball to be played and not manipulated. And I think that really is all of everything that went into yesterday's talk and all that's gone into this offseason trying to change these rules. That is what it's about. The NBA doesn't want to see the days where guys are jumping sideways into guys to get foul shots, flinging themselves forward to get foul shots. They want to make it where guys draw a foul and go to the line and get 2 free throws, but they don't want to do it in a way where it's kind of making a mockery of the game. The first clip they showed yesterday was of Luka Doncic getting Andrew Wiggins in the air and literally throwing himself forward like a torpedo into the guy to get to the line. That's the kind of stuff that they want to go away. They made it clear, however, that like when Trae Young dribbles into the lane, stops, and a guy runs into him, and he's going to be 2 foul shots for Trae Young. They're not trying to take away the ability for guys to draw fouls, but what they don't want is, like I said, manipulating the game to a point where fans at home are thinking, this isn't a basketball play. And I think a level of common sense is being put in here, and I think it's going to be a very good thing for the league.
And Tim has a great breakdown, again, on ESPN.com of that call. But Clinton, who do you see affected most by this push to not call these types of fouls?
You know, they're calling this the James Harden rule sort of colloquially, and I understand that factor. But I do think that this is going to be more interesting than just eliminating that. I think it's going to change the way a lot of guys are able to play defense, something that some of us actually enjoy watching in this league. And I'm really looking forward to how this is going to affect the way certain guys try to get to the bucket. But I think another important point here is that the Olympics put a real spotlight on this entire issue, because a lot of these guys from the NBA playing in this FIBA setup simply were not as effective players when it came time to the offensive end. So I think the NBA is doing a good thing here, understanding the tea leaves of where basketball fans are at, never mind their product, and this is going to make for a more enjoyable basketball product in the NBA, and that's really all we're looking for.
I agree.
One real quick thing, Cass. What Clinton said about playing both sides of the ball, that's another thing Monty McCutcheon really highlighted yesterday. They want to make it fair for guys not only on offense but on defense, and that it's a fair shake for a guy guarding somebody like James Harden or Trae Young to be able to guard them, and while they're going to foul them sometimes, not have situations where they manipulate the rules or manipulate the game in a way that just makes it unfair for a defensive player to be able to guard him effectively.
I think when this first came out, everyone was like, oh, yes, about time. I hope it doesn't, like, what's a catch in the NFL and people just trying to figure out what's a foul in the NBA. But, I'm here for it. I'll still watch the games. We are seeing a lot of people call foul on Twitter right now because the number one player in the NBA rank has been revealed. And LeBron is no longer number one. We'll discuss that next. But first, time for a distant replay. Guys, can you believe this? 3 years ago is when Kawhi told the world this.
Obviously, I love the game of basketball. It's just more questions you have to ask me in order for me to tell you about myself. I just can't give you a whole spiel. I don't even know where you're sitting at.
An ESPN insider and our guy Nick Friedel. And, you want to make some fans irrationally angry? Let's do it. Let's get into the top 5 of the ESPN NBA rank. Steph is at number 5, Luka number 4, LeBron at 3, Giannis at 2, and easy money sniper Kevin Durant at number 1. Now hold on. We're gonna break it all down, but first let's run it back to the top plays for each of the top 5 players in the NBA in this order. Let's go. Number 5, Steph in Boston with the lefty and 1.
Ooh.
This is from last season, by the way. That top plays from their last season. That's just like...
A little luck involved there, but residue of design.
No, there's no luck involved with Steph. They're all just his shots, really. Number 4, Luka Magic. Nick, what do you think of this?
It's insane. But what I love, Cass, is we got to see it more last year, both with Steph and with Luka. You look to the benches, and dudes are just sitting there like, what is happening? They couldn't believe it either.
Yes, exactly. And then how about this? Number 3, LeBron with the Steph-like dagger in the play-in game.
That was huge, that play, by the way. You look at your boy Drizzy over there, Nick. Your man, certified lover boy, out there. He's impressed.
Even Steph laughed after this one a little bit, guys, because he knew what it was like to get that shot knocked down on him. He's done it before. He had to give LeBron props after that one.
Tough standard for playing games to live up to. How about number 2, Giannis, game 4, meeting Ayton at the rim. He had so many plays in the finals. Like, this is a good one, but I could name a few more that, his finals was absurd.
One of the best defensive plays I've ever seen in the finals, no doubt about it.
Number 1, KD, game 7 in Brooklyn. I still don't know if this is true. Like, Nick, you may know. Is it true that he wears a shoe size larger than his actual foot size?
I've heard it a few times, Cass, and if it was one size a little smaller, KD knocks that down and is putting on an even more historical performance later on. But it was an unbelievable shot in the moment either way.
The NBA would be different heading into this season, that's for sure. Okay, that was the eye candy. Now let's break everything down. It's the usual suspects, but it's the top that has people buzzing. LeBron, not used to being number 3 on any list. Giannis, the finals MVP. And then Kevin Durant gets the nod at the top spot. Nick, did they get it right?
They did. KD is the best for me, guys. It's not even that close because when he's healthy and he's right on both ends of the floor, he is an unbelievable difference maker, and now we're seeing it in Brooklyn just like we saw it those last 2 seasons when he was healthy with the Warriors. Giannis is an incredible player, but he is not as complete right now in this moment as KD, and LeBron's been there so often, but if you were telling me I had to pick one guy today, I'd pick Kevin Durant over LeBron because LeBron's 37, but frankly, KD's just a better player right now.
I agree 100%. Here's the deal, and I said this earlier in the show. LeBron James is the best basketball player in the history of basketball, except LeBron James is in year daggone near 20. So right now, putting him in the top 3, I think, is giving him a lot of credit for who he has been as much as who he can be. But Nick and I agree on this. When it comes down to what I call the playground pick'em factor, I'm picking KD if I want to win a basketball game. It's as simple as that. Giannis showed a lot. I think the gap between him and KD lessened this offseason, or rather last finals, because of how well he played in leading the Bucks to that title. But, I mean, come on now. My man is a silent killer. Every shot he puts up goes in. I can't really, in this day's league, we talk about defending and all this other stuff. He's just too good of a scorer, too complete of a player, as Nick said, for me to take him off of number 1. It's not really that controversial to me, to be honest.
Well, I mean, look, I don't know about all that. I think you can make an argument for all 3, kind of like in MVP voting, like how, where do you go with this? Like, obviously, LeBron James has had a reign for so long. Before he got hurt, he was the MVP in the league, and he's still LeBron James at 36 years old, 19th season. There's something to be said about that. Giannis, he had the best season. He won the finals MVP. Before that, 2-time MVP. I mean, the facts are there. And KD, to your point, like, if you ask me, like, who right now is the best player, I would still go KD, but you can't say it's not controversial. Because,
I mean, KD's coming off of that injury, too. There's almost an argument that it's more impressive from a body standpoint in terms of what he's doing at this stage of his career. I think it's not controversial because I don't think either pick would send you wrong, I guess is probably the best way to say that.
And, Cass, I'd add to Clint's point with this. KD's going to be better this season. It always takes that 1 year coming off an injury to shake off whatever rust may be there. We saw it in the postseason. He was dominant. But this year, this version of Kevin is going to be even better than the version we saw last year.
Look, we may just have to run through some more of the hits with these 3, like a versus battle, and decide that way. Because
can we show Giannis dancing?
Yeah,
that's my favorite.
There we go. Because speaking of, coming up on the jump, Fat Joe joining us. We'll talk all things Knicks and ask him if he's nervous about the Nets fans taking over New York. Yeah. Keep it locked right here on The Jump. Rapper and Knicks superfan, Fat Joe to The Jump. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, thank you so much for having me.
Well, we have to start first with your epic versus battle with Ja Rule last week in the Mecca, Madison Square Garden. Now that you've had a week to reflect on that experience, what do you remember most?
Just getting into the psyche of this versus battle. Like it felt like a prize fight. Like I was walking down the stairs, the doorman of the building was like, "Get him, Joe, get him." The lady at the crossing guard at the corner was like, get him. I mean, I felt like I was Mike Tyson for a day. Like, if I could ever try to feel like Mike Tyson, I felt like I am Mike Tyson that day.
I mean, the tension was like a weigh-in that you guys had on the stage. Now, I know you guys are all good, but, the New York smack talk was in full effect. To be honest with you, a little bit of WWE,
You know what I'm saying? Like we wanted to get the ratings up. It was the number 1 most rated ever versus on the Instagram. And so it worked, so a little trash talking with each other, trash talking, getting the fans into it, getting the fans involved. But at the end of the day, me and Ja Rule were like, best friends. So I love him. I love his family. And we did it for hip hop. Hip hop won.
Yeah, well, after that versus, all I know is yesterday's price is not today's price.
It's not today's price.
It's not today's price. And maybe
no, it's not.
And maybe you can say that about your New York Knicks. We know you love your Knicks. And when Kemba Walker and Evan Fournier were introduced last month, you were there at the press conference. Yeah. How did you end up being part of that event?
Well, they asked me to show up the Knicks, but it's a dream come true for me because I used to go to the Garden and sit way up a deck, the last seat, looking at MJ playing the Knicks. And the fact to be invited by the organization to give the jerseys to Kemba and Fournier, that was like a dream come true. And so I'm in the moment. I never get too... I appreciate all the moments like this.
Yeah, and look, the Knicks had a moment last year. I mean, they were in the playoffs, and with Kemba and Fournier added to that Knicks core that made the playoffs last season, what are your expectations this season for your Knicks?
Second round, maybe third. I mean, listen, Kemba had an off year last year, but if you really think about Kemba and his numbers, he could only help the team. And, we asked a lot of Derrick Rose. I love that the Knicks brought him back and they gave him a big contract because he deserved it. But now Derrick Rose has a little help with Kemba. And I look to as learning experience. The team is very, very young. Julius Randle and all of them. Now it's time, to get mature. We already saw the burst last year, and now we need to just keep moving forward.
And we see you courtside a lot. Christmas Day, they have the Hawks at the Garden. That means Trae Young, who knows how to put on a show at MSG. So, I mean, I'm assuming you're going to be there. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I've always loved Trae Young as a player. I've always wanted him to be a Knick. It didn't work out. I always wanted Kemba to be a Knick. I'm a point guard driven. I'm about point guards and I'm about big men. And to me, that's determines championships to me. And so I always love Trae's game. He's built for that Garden. He's built to come in there and talk trash. But I think we're going to have a better outcome on Christmas Day.
Well, speaking of guys you wanted to become a Knick, 2 years ago when KD and Kyrie went to the Nets, you said that, they didn't want the smoke of playing for the Knicks. Looking where they are now, any concerns about the Nets maybe taking over the New York fan base?
Never that. Never that. Because the Garden is the Garden. The Knicks is the grandfather team. We bleed blue and orange. We're not leaving nowhere. And the people who go over there, we're not, we don't really want them. You know what I mean? Now, with the same thing being said, the Brooklyn Nets are a great organization. The people at the Barclays are great people. And I wish nothing but love and respect for them and success. But, I'm a Knicks fan. And all true Knicks fans, we're going to stay right at the Garden. If you see Spike still there, I'm still there. We there.
Right.
We not leaving. And our team is only getting better and better and better.
Well, speaking of KD, he topped our ESPN rank of players, followed by Giannis, then LeBron. You agree with that order of top 3 players in the league?
No.
Then who's your top 3?
I would switch it around a bit. I would go LeBron, I would go KD, and I would go Giannis.
Even after the finals?
It's a field day after that. After that, who knows? One day it might be Spider Mitchell. One day it might be Damon Lillard. One day, that past that 3, Anthony Davis, it's, I don't even think you could do a top 5 no more besides this top 3.
Right.
It's like, it's got to be like a top 10.
Well, Steph may have something to say about that again this year, but LeBron, you're number one. Why LeBron number 1 over, Giannis after the finals performance he put on, KD, how he showed up after his, injury. Why LeBron again at number 1?
Because LeBron James is the king. That's it. I mean, you get no higher than the king. He's the king, man. Y'all got to stop acting like, if you look with no disrespect, and it's going to sound disrespectful, but if you look at everybody who came in at the same time as LeBron James, they're already, retiring. They're already, this guy is still in great shape. He's still a great player, mentor. He sees the floor. Nobody passes better than him. I mean, LeBron James is LeBron James. I mean, KD has legitimate beef. He has, KD is phenomenal, and Giannis got a lot of heart. And I love that he stood with his franchise. I love that he's so down to earth with it, and he gives 110%. So I say that's the top 3.
According to Joe, 19th season, 36, about to be 37. The reign continues for LeBron James. Now, before we go, any new music on the horizon or special guests coming up on your biggest show, IG Live show?
I don't know. I had dinner last night with my good friend Spider Mitchell. We was talking some moves. He was talking Utah, how much he loves Utah. Who knows who's coming up next? I know that tonight I actually have a segment on my IG Live where I'm talking about the top 10 NBA players, because I tried to do a top 5 myself this week, and it was brutal. But top 10, we're going to allude to that top 10. And, that rotates all the time. Like Steph, he was top 5 up till last year. Probably the best. But these things move around. The same thing with rappers, man. One day you will say Rakim, one day you say Jay-Z, one day you say Biggie. It just moves around.
That's true. Okay, tune in to that IG Live. Nothing can stop him. Fat Joe, such a pleasure.
All the way up.
Thanks for joining us on The Jump.
Thank you.
Man, and speaking of New York, what a fight the Liberty put up. The WNBA playoffs started with a bang. We've got Ryan Ruocco and Rebecca. Exciting night. Appreciate you guys joining us. And we really want to get into first the Liberty and Mercury. As Phoenix, they're a 10-point favorite, and they survived at the buzzer. Rebecca, what stood out to you the most about that battle last night?
Well, I didn't expect this game to be close, to be honest with you, because of the way the regular season matchups had gone. But what really stood out to me was the play of Sophie Cunningham. Without Diana Taurasi in the lineup, the New York defensively flooded inside. Even before Brittany Griner got touches, they had multiple defenders on her. And Phoenix had difficulty with that early until they inserted Sophie Cunningham, who was absolutely phenomenal. 6 of 7 from the three-point line. This is a player who's a reserve, who knows her role. It was a career high for her yesterday, and they desperately needed that because of the way New York was playing defensively. A huge bright spot for them going forward with the uncertainty of Diana Taurasi in the next round.
And I think for me, Cass, the thing that stood out most to me is New York and how well they played and how bright their future is. Yes, they lost this game, but you look at some of the young pieces there. Benijah Laney, who has really come into her own and showed last night, she can do it on the big stage as well against the biggest opponents. You look at Sabrina Ionescu in her first playoff game, the way she orchestrated, obviously the double-digit assists, the double-digit points, also just the poise of the possessions down the stretch. That's what was so remarkable to me. Even though they lost, there were multiple times Rebecca and I were watching the game together after we had called our game, and we were like, wow, there have been so many points where it felt like Phoenix was going to run away and hide, and New York didn't let them. So, yes, they end up losing, but they're going to use that game as a foundational piece moving forward for what could be a contending team in the years to come in the not-too-distant future.
Yeah, without a doubt. Even though it was just a one playoff game, it was still a playoff game, and you definitely build off of that. And we'll see what happens with Diana Taurasi as the Mercury now move on to face the defending champion Storm, who might not have Brianna Stewart, who missed the last week of the season with a left foot injury. That game Sunday is also a single elimination game. And Rebecca, how much does the playoff format hurt the Storm in this scenario?
I think any team that has injury or where you might get a player back, it could hurt you because you don't have an opportunity to get that player back. I would like to see the playoff format. I think the first round, it's fair. 7 and 8 seeds, they get one shot to play a higher seed, a 5 or 6. But I think as you go forward, in particular, when you get to these 3 and 4 seeds, they should not be in a position where they face single elimination. I think it would be much better that they could get potentially best of 3. The hard part with that is then your 1 and 2 seeds are sitting for a really, really long time. But as exciting as last night was, I think that's fair. With the 5 through 8 to have the single elimination, but going forward, I would like to see it go to a three-game series in the second round.
Especially, Cass, if you look at both of these, the 3 seed and the 4 seed, I think, they both are vulnerable in these matchups. Minnesota was hot at the end of the regular season, unlike Seattle, but Chicago is a dangerous team. For Seattle, this is definitely going to be a toss-up matchup because we don't know about the health status of Brianna Stewart. It looks like there's at least a strong possibility she does not play in this game. And as we saw from the Storm down the stretch, they're a completely different team when they don't have the former MVP on the floor, obviously so. So we'll see if Phoenix has Taurasi. Rebecca's talked about this, and I think she's right. Whichever team gets their star back has the advantage in that matchup. If Phoenix ends up with Taurasi on the floor, I think they're the favorites to win that game. If somehow Breanna Stewart plays, all of a sudden you'd feel good about the Storm's chances.
Well, last night, you two were on the call between the Wings and Sky. Chicago pulled away late from Dallas behind 23 from Kalia Cooper and 11, 15, and 7 from Candace Parker. The Sky have another winner-go-home scenario Sunday with 3-seeded Minnesota. Ryan, what's your biggest head-to-head matchup between the Sky and Lynx Sunday?
You know, it's interesting, Cassidy, because so often when we think about big playoff matchups, I think, we initially go to the backcourt, right? And you think about, okay, who's the player who's just going to have the ball in their hands, who's going to be able to create buckets. And that's not necessarily what you have with the backcourts of these two teams, but sort of, 2-3 swing players I kind of look at in Kalia Copper and then her matchup going up against Aerial Powers. They both can fill it up. They're two-way players. They bring a lot of activity. They're not necessarily the consistent backcourt type scorers you look to in playoff games. But I think you could end up looking at that matchup, especially what those players also do defensively for their teams and energy-wise, and saying, all right, whichever ends up having the better game could end up swinging the result for her respective team.
And Cassidy, I always like watching the big matchup because that's what I played. I was an inside player. But in this matchup in particular, what's interesting, when we called the game last night between Chicago and Dallas, it was a huge contrast in playoff experience. Chicago, a ton of playoff experience, and Dallas only with 10 total games on their roster of playoff experience. Well, in this game, you've got a bunch of players, in particular Candace Parker and Sylvia Fowles, who not only have playoff experience, they have championship experience. They have been in these moments. They've been in championship moments. Candace Parker's won it once. Sylvia Fowles won it 4 times in Minnesota. This is going to be a pretty incredible head-to-head matchup, and specifically because they play such different styles. Both very good defensively. Syl, more of an inside player. Candace can face you and take you off the dribble. But this is going to be a fun matchup between two seasoned post players.
Talk about Sunday fun day. And with the next round this weekend, we wanted to run it back with you guys and go look at the top 3 best plays from the second round with you. And from last year in the bubble, Candace Parker, between the legs, scoop with the left. Exactly.
That is a nasty finish.
Off the glass with a kiss. We stay in the bubble for our second play. Diana Taurasi wanted a 4-point play so bad she pleaded with the official before the shot even went in.
Only Diana Taurasi and could probably hit that consistently. Playing before the shots through the net.
Hey, gotta love her fire. And an all-timer in 2019 to Erica Hamby with the steal, tosses a prayer when she didn't even need to, and it goes in anyway.
This is like the teaspoon shot, right? This is a historic forever shot. And you're right, Cass. The most absurd thing about it is she released it when there was like 6 seconds left on the clock. We didn't need the 47-footer, but that's what we got, and I think we're all blessed to have had it.
Well, look, the WNBA playoffs are such an exciting time, and Ryan, you've upped the excitement this year in your life with the addition of beautiful baby Everly to the family. Oh, congrats, my friend. Ryan, how has the first 3 weeks as a parent been like for you?
Well, thank you, Cassidy. Thank you for asking and for showing that. It's been amazing. I mean, I love being a dad. As much as I was already in love with my wife, I'm even more in love with her now after seeing, what she went through to bring our beautiful daughter into the world. And it's just amazing. It's the best. It was not easy leaving for the WNBA playoffs. But if I'm going to have to leave my baby girl, at least it's to do something I love with teammates I love. So she was watching last night. She's going to be acclimated real quickly into the WNBA.
Well, parenting advice, you got a pro right next to you. Not talking about me. I'm new in the game. Rebecca's the real parenting pro right there. But I'm sure Everly will have one eye open watching you this weekend. Thank you both for joining us, and have a great weekend in the WNBA playoffs.
Thanks, Cassidy.
Okay, guys, don't miss Rebecca and Ryan and Holly.